Zambia's developmental aspirations are embedded in a strategic document called the Seventh National Development Plan. The plan was launched last year and is set for an implementation period of 5 years, to be specific, 2017 to 2021. Considering the fact that it has been a year since the plan was launched, what has the 7th National Development Plan achieved so far? You're watching This Week with me, Wenson Mavoro, and my guest on the program is Salim Kaunda, who is Head of Research and Policy Analysis at the Policy for Monitoring and Research Center, PMRC. Welcome to Bizweek, Salim.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Okay, just to get right into it, as we look at how the 7th National Development Plan, which is obviously very fundamental and important for every Zambian out there watching us, I know that this plan is not the first one that we've had. Though this plan, has attracted some sort of verbal commitment and seriousness. What are some of the plans that we had previously?
All right, interesting. We had plans before in the Kaunda time, and then there was a time when we actually stopped and just continued with our development. But I think the most recent ones are the 5th National Development Plan. Then we had the 6th, and then after some time, it was revised. So it was the RSNDP. So it was a revised 6th National Development Plan, which came to an end. And then now we have the 7th National Development Plan, which runs from 2017 to 2021. And I think this has been the most pronounced of all previous development plans.
So what went wrong with the previous plans that we had for us to, settle on this particular one that we have? And for those of you that are watching us at home right now, or currently watching us on Facebook as we're streaming live on the Diamond TV page, you can simply get to participate on the program by simply calling 0974 001218.
All right, thank you so much. So with the previous plans, I think we should understand that the plans have a span of 5 years. So realistically, in 5 years, the plan was supposed to achieve what it was intended to actually achieve. So after 5 years, another plan should come on. It's like a race, and we have a relay. So after 5 years, another plan comes up. But more so importantly, let me mention that all these plans are building towards Vision 2030 for us. So we've set a course of what Zambia should look like by the year 2030. And for us to get to that stage, these development plans every 5 years are formulated as a stepping stone towards realization of the Vision 2030. So every 5 years, it's time for us to re-strategize, to replan, and to look at changing conditions around the world, changing economic trends, and how can we adapt for the development of our country. So that's basically why every 5 years we need a different plan.
As PMRC, you have been quite, doing a lot of projects with regards tracking the progress of the 7th National Development Plan. Would you say that the majority of Zambians actually know about this plan? And what is the importance of this plan to any patriotic Zambian out there?
Yeah, interesting. So I think let me begin by the importance of the plan and if people actually know about the plan. So like I said, by 2030, we want Zambia to be a developed middle-income nation. Now, for us to achieve that state, we should have a mental picture of what Zambia would look like by 2030. The questions arise, is Zambia going to be, the food basket of the SADC region? Is Zambia going to be this industrialized nation? Is Zambia going to have huge figures in terms of human development where, poverty levels are low and everything? So when we have that mental picture of what the country will be in 2030, then we devise this plan to come up with programs and projects that would lead us to achieve that state that we want. So for Zambia, we've already identified we want to be a developed middle-income nation by 2030. And so all the fundamentals that pertain to that state are what are embedded in the 7NDP as a stepping stone, mind you, as one of the steps towards realization of that plan. Now, having said that, we should understand that the importance of the plan, therefore, is that for us to achieve that state, we cannot just go about business as usual. We cannot just go about development without tracking performance, without having specific programs that we can use to measure progress if Zambia is actually attaining that status. So it has pillars that are actually or the anchor pillars that are actually guiding the 7NDP, and those are the ones that are used to guide and see if we're achieving our intended purpose. Then if you ask to say, are people aware about it, I think to be realistic, some work needs to be done in relations to certain groups of society that need to know about the plan. Of course, there was consultation processes that came into place during the formulation stage, which we were also part of as PMRC. And we noticed that sometimes when we went to certain areas, sometimes there was the issue of language, where some terms were, you can't basically interpret some of the terms in local language. So that also caused for perhaps certain sections of 7NDP to be translated into local languages for people to understand. And also we can talk about Braille, for example. There's all those people who are visually impaired who need to understand the 7th NDP. Better off if it was
As
in
we
Braille
speak,
as well.
is there
So,
is there
yes.
a copy of the seventh NDP that possibly is specifically made for those people?
To the best of my knowledge, I think with discussions that we've had, I'm told that that is actually in the pipeline. As that now, I don't think there is such, but different sections that represent those groups of people have been engaged. So that means their aspirations have been included. Because if you look at the 7NDP, and if you look at the first 10, 20 pages, there are sections that have segmented society to talk about developmental needs of the church, of the students, of the disabled, of the minors. So it has segmented different sectors of society and then brings out what it is that development means to them. So the first 20 pages talk about that. Then the rest of the pages now are interventions to try as much as possible to encompass all those needs from all those sections of society into, what should we do about the minors? What should we do about the disabled? What should we do about nutrition, the children? So there's all those aspects put together. No wonder it's a very important document because ultimately it guides development delivery.
I love the
for
fact that
country.
you've mentioned that achievement or successful implementation of the seventh national development plan, does not really require or call for a business as usual attitude,
Yes.
but it requires, focused, sticking to certain disciplines that have been set to ensuring that this plan is successfully implemented. At the moment, we know that Zambia is grappling with the issue of debt and the Treasury is going through some serious suffocation. Do you think that the implementation of the 7th NDP will be as successful on the financing side?
Very interesting question. Well, 7NDP was launched by the president 2017 June. Now, this brings us to the aspect of looking at the year. Where are we now? 2018. So what we're talking about is that there's been almost 1 year down the line. Okay. Now, when 7NDP was launched, the budget for 2018 was actually already being formulated. So this upcoming budget, 2018-2019, would directly speak to 7NDP. We suspect that even the format of the budget itself will be directly translated to the programs and projects that are in 7NDP. So it will try as much as possible to fund what is in the 7NDP. But it's not only government alone. At the launch of 7NDP, various cooperating partners were there, and they gave their commitment to actually fund some of the programs. UNDP was there, the World Bank was there, and we know that they're actually funding some of the components. However, the aspect of financing is also one that affected the previous plans we talked about, the 6th and the 5th. So 7NDP also would require adequate backing in terms of finance if we are to be successful with the implementation, because trust me, it's a very ambitious document with huge projects in it, and those require financing. So there is need for more financing on that one.
Now, Zambia has a reputation, or
Yeah.
maybe before I get to that, actually, for you to participate in this interesting, wonderful discussion that should actually, attract or call for your serious participation, the 7th National Development Plan, all you simply need to do is to call 0974-001218. Zambia has a reputation of, coming up with good policies. But apparently, the implementation of those good policies has really created a situation that creates little to desire. Is there any difference? Are we on course with this particular plan?
Yeah, definitely. We need to have confidence in 7NDP. I agree to what you've talked about. I think traveling around the region, we hear that. Whenever you see you from Zambia, people would say, no, we understand Zambia is good in producing documents. And actually, other countries model what we produce as Zambia in terms of the plan of the project.
I'd love to hold you right there. There's Mr. Mambwe from Kabanana calling us right now. You're through to Bizweek, Mr. Mambwe from Lusaka, Kabanana area. Hello, you're through to Bizweek, Mr. Mambwe.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Mambwe, what is your contribution?
Thank you, the moderator. I just have a question.
Go ahead.
All right. It is just a question. It's a very interesting topic that you are discussing. I'm really enjoying. Can you hear me?
The line is bad apparently. Please keep trying to call Mr. Mambwe and you will eventually get through. 0974-001218 is the line to get through to post your contribution and be part of this pertinent discussion. You can go You can go on, Salim.
Okay, so you were talking about the timeline as well, I think. Looking at how people know about the plan and the financing itself. So basically, I said 7NDP is different because it has learned from the mistakes of the previous plans. So you notice that previously, planning was according to a ministry or sector. So a ministry would be funded, let's say health, this is what you're going to do, here's the funding, tourism, education. But that in its own did not promote coordination and harmonization within the government system. So 7NDP has come up with a multi-sectoral approach that promotes different ministries to work together. And that's why we have what are called development outcomes. So 7NDP has identified key development outcomes, and then it identifies which different ministries have to work together to achieve that development outcome, and also the financing models, and also the institutions that will need to be created, the people, and all the way down. So that is what we did not have previously. And I think that's what should give us confidence if you look at 7NDP, because without that, if ministries were working in silos, there was overlapping of responsibilities, and I think generally it was slower in terms of the development of the plan itself. So this time around, no wonder you've noticed that every now and then we see interministerial task force. I think a critical example when we had the corridor issue in Lusaka, people would have thought Minister of Health would deal with that alone. But we saw that the Minister of Local Government came on board, Minister of Health came on board, we had ZNS, we had the Army and everyone else. So that task force helped us achieve that pandemic quite quickly. Unlike if it was a situation where health was left alone to deal with that issue.
You know, I love
So
the fact
that's
that
how-
you're bringing the cholera scenario,
Yeah.
which obviously facilitated the implementation of the multi-sectoral approach
Yes.
to challenge, addressing a challenge. We've seen crises such as the burning down of City Market, the recently gutting down of Comesa. Why are we not seeing that same multi-sectoral approach being exerted on that front?
I think, to the best of my knowledge, it has been to some extent. If you remember very well, I think the president has been directing the Lusaka province minister, for example, to take that role, to work with the intended ministries and perhaps address what has been happening. Realistically, it's also a matter of their key mandates not being overlapped. Because mind you, every sector has got intended purpose that it has to actually deliver. So in this case, when it's ventured into a task force, it should not forget that its basic mandate is to serve the people in one or the other. So then we look at other critical offices, such as office of the ministry or provincial minister, for example. Then the councils also have a critical role to play. So they are also being brought on board, depending on what the issue is. And I think that way it's promoting
Mr.
coordination.
Sakwaha from Solwezi is currently on the line. You're through to Bizweek, Mr. Sakwaha. Hello, you're through to Bizweek, Mr. Sakwaha.
Hello?
You're through to Bizweek, Mr. Sakwaha. What is your contribution or question?
Yeah, my contribution is that if the Third National Development Plan has already gone through 1 year, so around the 1 year, what is it that it has achieved?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sakwaha. Important question indeed.
Definitely.
We're talking about 12 months since the launch. What is it that the 7th National Development Plan has achieved? Something that we can point to and say, yes,
Of
well,
course.
there's this.
Yeah, definitely there are things that we can point at, especially institutional realignments, which were quite key. We can't just start moving about development delivery without institutional realignments. So first and foremost, the Ministry of National Planning was established for the sole purpose of creating this same plan and monitoring it throughout, which we never had, by the way. Initially, we only had Ministry of Finance, and national development plans used to fall within that category. Now you understand the critical role of Ministry of Finance. So then we had a specific ministry that led the process of formulation. It's in place. We have cluster advisory groups that have come up to replace sector advisory groups. So clusters, even in the word itself, it's brought together different sectors. Then we have the national committee itself, provincial, district. So it goes into different tiers of the country. People have already been appointed who are going to ensure that their roles, according to 7NDP, are being undertaken.
I love the fact
And-
that you've mentioned institutions that have been set up at the
Yes,
moment,
yes.
to ensure successful implementation.
Yeah.
Now, I know that for every person watching us right now, when you talk about development,
Yeah.
you are obviously looking at improved quality of living.
Of course.
When are we likely to see these institutions,
Yeah.
begin to emanate some sort of trickle-down effect that
Yes,
will
yes,
facilitate
yes.
the improved standards of living for the people out there.
Yes, actually, that's where I was going to. So the initial stages, actually, the first 6 months of implementation was supposed to be realignments, which we have seen. And then we also have ward development committees that have been established to work with the local councils. So now we have a structure that helps translate the plan from the center, from the topmost, all the way down to ward development committees. So having put that in place, therefore, different clusters now have been assigned to the development outcomes I mentioned about, focusing on agriculture, focusing on health, focusing on manufacturing. So those actually now are working with the specific ministries and specific stakeholders. And recently, interestingly enough, the analytical report or the annual progress report just came out. And I would encourage the public to get a copy of that because it actually puts everything that has been achieved in 1 year. Of course, for me to start saying that, we wouldn't have time. But then we have key performance indicators, and we've been able to see, for example, one of the pillars talks about improving the social cash transfer, looking at the social aspect of people. We've seen increased allocation to social cash transfer, for example. That's one of them.
Hold your mouth just now, Salim. Mr. Kabutu from Luwingu is actually on the line. You're through to Biswick, Mr. Kabutu. You're through to Biswick, Mr. Kabutu. Okay, we've lost Mr. Kabutu right there from Luwingu. And as you were expounding on that thought, let me just maybe, divert you a little bit. What is the significance of decentralization as we talk about the 7th National Development Plan?
No, it's very critical. I think, as I was mentioning, it's very critical because without decentralization, it would be very hard for us to implement 7NDP. And that's what actually affected the previous plans. Why do we say this? It's because people have to move from the center to the periphery to certain areas for development to actually reach those areas. Why we say so is because if everyone is centralized, we talk about this thing of an equal distribution of wealth and resources. So what's been happening is that from the government side, everything has been signed. From cabinet side, it's been signed. Circular number 10 has been signed. People have to move. Now, the challenge has been sometimes people are told to move, but then there's no finances attached to that. Because if you were getting salary under Ministry of Home Affairs, when you move and get attached to the council, you have to be paid from the council now. So there's been that challenge of fiscal centralization. There's also a challenge of capacity for the council to undertake some of those tasks. So realistically, one is a situation whereby a province or a district can map out its development course according to the unique conditions that pertain to that province. Now, for that to actually go through, so we need the Provincial Development Committee in place, the district, the Ward Development Committee, and the local council. So if they agree and say, for example, Western Province, with all this water and climate that we had, we want Western Province to be an agricultural hub, anchoring on rice and all those crops that do. So with that...
Due to the interest of time,
yes,
Salim,
please.
due to the interest of time, what would you recommend in less than a minute to be done to ensure that this information gap is closed and citizens, also render in their participation to ensuring that this plan is successfully implemented to the benefit of their lives?
Of course, first and foremost, citizens need to take buy-in into this plan. Citizens need to feel that they own this development plan. It shouldn't be seen as a plan that's just existent, but it's a plan that shapes the development discourse of our country. Now, so that's citizens going for information. Then from the Ministry of National Development Planning and stakeholders, I think we need to do more in terms of sensitizations. We need the plan to be easily accessible to as many people as possible, perhaps translate it into Braille, into local language, and to have as many road shows as possible, radio programs, engage community radio stations, engage traditional leaders, for the sole purpose of people to understand what they stand to benefit in that locality that is in the 7NDP. That's the only way people will be able to identify and see the 7NDP as a plan that speaks to their aspirations as well. So that's in a minute, that's what I would say, actually.
Thank you very much, Ali, for coming through to
Biswick. It's been a pleasure.
It has indeed been an interesting conversation, and my guest has been Salim Kaunda from PMRC, who is Head of Research and Policy Analysis. The conversation was bordering on what the 7th National Development Plan has achieved after 1 year of implementation. Emanating from this conversation are issues to do with bridging the information gap to ensure that citizens can participate effectively in the implementation of this plan. Remember, this is your plan. You've been watching Biswick with me, Winston Mabur. Have a lovely night.